We're going to take a look at the loner, and section 1 is like this. So as you can hear, that's the first section of the melody. We're using a similar kind of motif moving around. We're starting on A5, then we're D5, D7, then bending up the D7 a half step with some vibrato. So sometimes the vibrato in this piece is done with the bar, sometimes with the fingers. It's a bit random, so you'll probably find that whatever gets the sound you want is the thing you'll do. Then we move on to A5, A6, D8, A3, D3, D5, sliding up to D7. So that's actually re-picked. And kind of lazy feel sliding down, back to A3, single hit, then another hit sliding up to A5. And again, that lazy slide down, A1, then quite staccato, D1, D3, and D5. Back to A1. Now this time, you pull off the note and at the same time scoop the tremolo arm. Just push it down slightly and raise it again. So it's a bit like a string bend effect. Then D5, D5, D7, and then D7 again bent up a half step. And release the bend. Back to D5. Then hammer on to D7, scooping the tremolo arm again. So section 2. Starting on the 5th fret of the G string, bend up a whole step, release the bend, then pull off to G3. D5 then slides up to D7. D5 pulling off to D3. There's another scoop with the tremolo arm here. You can pick the note, but you'll normally find that if you hammer on and scoop at the same time, it brings the note to life. With less attack. Then it's D5. Similar figure again, this bend on the G string, 5, upper tone and back, pulling off to 3. Then the slide up from 5 to 7 on the D. Then a kind of rake across the strings, very staccato here, a double stop on the 5th fret of the D and G strings. So it's, okay, then 3 on the D. Then slide up from 3, re-pick and slide up from 3 to 5 on the D. And then a careless, giving you a chance to hear the echo. Section 10. Very similar to the intro. 14th fret on the G string, 15th on the B, 17th on the B, 17th again with that half tone bend, then hit again with a half tone bend, one without, back to the 15th fret, slide down. All the phrases end with a slide down like that really. A subtle difference here, we're starting from the 12th fret, of the G string, then the 13th fret of the B, 15th on the B, same again with a bend, whole tone bend again, but release it this time, and then to the 13th fret, slide down, 10th fret, 12th fret, and then 13th on the B string, 13th again with a bend of a whole tone, Same again and release the bend. Back to the 12th on the B string. 10th fret B. 12th fret on the G with a quarter tone bend. Just to smooth so it's not. So that's back to the 10th fret on the B string. 12th fret on the B string. Then 12th fret again with a half tone bend. No vibrato really, just hold that and then slide down. Section 11. Right, okay, another variation on the melody. We're starting on the 14th fret of the G string again, then 15th on the B, 17th on the B, and then the same again with a half tone bend. Back over to the 15th fret of the top E, over to the B string, 15th fret, bend a whole tone up, and then straight note without the bend on the 15th fret there. 15th fret of the B string, whole tone bend, then back to the 15th fret on the B without a bend. 12 on the G, 13 on the B, 15 on the B. Same again with the bend, whole tone. 13 on the top E, back to the 15 with another bend, whole tone. 15 no bend. 13 on the B. And slide down again. Now it's 10, 12 and 13 again on the B string. 13 bend up a whole tone. Same again but release the bend and pull off to 10. Then it's 13, bend up a whole tone, and that's done twice. And the last part of this section is the 10th fret on the top E, 13th on the B, and then the 10th on the B sliding down. And that's picked fairly quickly, like that. Section 12. Twentieth fret on the top E string, bend up a whole step. Same again but with a quarter tone bend. 17 on the top E. B on the 20th fret. Pull off to 17. 19 on the G, bend up a quarter tone. 17 on the B. 19 on the G, bend up a whole tone, release the bend and pull off to 17. 19 on the G. 19 on the D, 17 on the G, 19 on the G, bend up a whole step, 17 on the B, then the top E, 17 on the B again, 20 on the B, pulling off to 17, 19 on the G, 17 on the B, 19 on the G, bend up a whole step, release the bend and pull off to 17. 19 on the G, 19 on the D, 17 on the G, 19 on the G, 19 again on the G but bend up a whole step with some vibrato. Section 13. So a nice short section, basically a slide down the low E string, anywhere will do really, as long as it sounds like you're ready to kick in with this E power chord, which is the 7th fret of the A string, 9th fret of the D and the 9th fret of the G, and there's 6 hits on that. Section 14. Nice short section there, just the 7th fret on the G string, that's bent up a half step. The volume's actually backed off on the guitar, probably to about 3 or 4 would be good. Section 15. So another variation on the main melody, 14th fret on the G, 15 on the B, 17 on the B. Same again with a half tone bend. Then again, 17 with no bend, 15 on the B and slide off, 12 on the G, 13 on the B, 15 on the B, then 15 on the B with a whole tone bend. Same again, but release the bend. Then 13 on the B and slide down. Then 10, 12 and 13 on the B. Okay. 13 on the B again with a whole tone bend. And once more, but release the bend. Then down to 12 on the B. Now it's 10 on the B string, but there's a rake across to give it some thickness. So the best way to get that effect is to use your spare fingers to mute the other strings and just brush across like that. Then it's 12 on the B, 12 on the B with a half tone bend, 13 on the B with a whole tone bend and vibrato. Lastly, 15th fret on the B string with a whole tone bend and vibrato and slide off. Section 16. Another variation on the main melody, 14 on the G, 15 on the B, 17 on the B. Same again with a half tone bend. Hold that with some vibrato, then release the bend. Back to 15 on the B. Slide off. 12 on the G. 13 on the B. 15 on the B. 15 on the B again with a whole tone bend. 13 on the top E. Back to 15 on the B with another whole tone bend. 15 on the B with no bend. And 13 on the B. And a slide off. Then it's 10, 12 and 13 on the B. 13 on the B with a whole tone bend. Same again with the whole tone bend, but release the bend this time. Then 12 on the B. 10 on the B. 12 on the G with a quarter tone bend. And finally, 10 on the B. Section 17. This section's a repeated figure. It's the 12th fret on the G string bent up a whole step, and then 2 hits on the 10th fret of the B string. So that happens 4 times. The last time is subtly different. You've got the 12th fret bend on the G string, but instead of the double hit on the 10th fret of the B string, there we'll go 10, 13, then 10th fret on the top E string, then up to the 12th fret on the top E string. Section 18. We're starting with the 12th fret of the top E bent up a half step. And then as that note sustains, flick the pick-up selector down to the bridge position, and that's re-picked. Then again, but bend up from the 12th up to the 15th fret of the top E. Then 2 bends here, the 15th fret of the B string up a whole tone, and then release that second one. 13th on the B, 15 on the B, 14 on the G, 13 on the B, and then 15 on the B to finish. Section 19. Right, 10th fret on the B string, 13th fret, and that's bent up a quarter tone, 10th fret on the top E, 12th on the top E, then 12th on the top E with a half step bend, release that bend, then pull off to 10 on the top E, then 13 on the B, back to 10 on the top E, 13 on the B pulling off to 10, then 12 on the G, 10 on the B hammering on to 13, 10 on the top E, 13 on the B, bend up a whole step, then release that bend, then down to 12 on the B. A little trill here between 10, 12 and 10, that's hammer on and pull off. Okay. Then 9th fret on the B string, 10th on the B string, then 10th fret on the B string, bend up a whole tone and then release, like that. 9th fret on the G, slide down, 5th fret on the G, bend up a whole tone, then 5th fret on the G with no bend, vibrato it a bit like that, then slide up. Section 20. Okay, we're starting with the 3rd fret on the low E string, which is bent up a half tone, then open A string, then 3rd on the A, semi-pinch harmonic there, not 2, but then up to the 5th fret of the A string, bend up a whole tone, then down to the 5th fret again, no bend. Now this section is very much improvised, I think, in the studio, so I'm going to try and make the fingering sensible. We're starting on the 3rd fret of the D string and then sliding up to the 7th. Then down to the 5th fret of the D string, then we're going to slide from the 5th to the 7th, then up to the 10th. Okay. Then jump over to the 7th fret of the G, then back to the 10th of the D string, sliding up to the 12th, 10th on the G, 12th on the D. Then these notes are quite quickly played in sequence. It's 10 on the G, 10 on the B, 13 on the B pulling off to 10, 12 on the B, then a trill between 10, 12 and 10 on the B, hammer on and pull off. Okay. Then 12 on the G, 10 on the B, 13 on the B, 15 on the B, bend up a whole tone, then reach over with your little finger perhaps and do the 15 on the top E. Okay, then back to the 15th fret of the B string, bend up a whole tone, release the bend and pull off to 13. Section 21. Okay, we're starting with the 15th fret of the B string, bend up a whole tone, then 15th fret of the B with no bend, 13 on the B, 2 hits on the 10th of the top E, 13 on the B, back to the 10th on the top E, then pull off from 12 to 10 on the same string, 13 to 10, then back to 12 to 10, 13 on the B, 10 on the top E, then it's 13, 12 and 10 on the B, 13 on the G, 12 to 10 pull off on the B string, 13 on the G, 10 on the B, 9 on the G, trill between 7, 9 and 7 on the G, hammer on and pull off, 5 sliding down to 4 on the G string, and a long slide here from the 7th fret of the D string. I'm sure it was probably random at the time, but by lucky chance happens to go all the way up, whoop, like that, onto the 19th fret of the D string. Section 22. (20) on the B string, bend up a whole step, 17 on the top E, 20 on the B, pulling off to 17, 19 on the G, 17 on the B, then 19 on the G, bend up a whole tone, release the bend and pull off to 17. 19 on the D, then it's 19 on the G, 19 on the D, 17 on the G, hammering on to 19, then 17 on the B, 17 on the top E, 20 on the top E, bend up a whole tone, then again, and then twice more, and wobble. Section 23. Twentieth fret on the top E string, then 17 hammering on to 19, then a trill between 17, 19 and 17, hammer on and pull off, 20 on the B string, up a quarter tone bend, okay, then 17 on the top E string, 17 on the B string, hammering on to 20, pulling off to 17 again, 19 on the G, pulling off to 17, then 19 on the D, G, back to the D, 17 on the G, hammering on to 19, 17 on the B, 17 on the top E, then 20 on the B, bending up a whole tone. Now this last move happens 3 times. It's the 17th fret on the top E, then the 20th fret on the B, bent up a whole tone. So, and then finish with another 17 on the top E. Section 24. (20) on the top E, bend up a whole step. 20 on the top E, no bend. 17 on the top E, 20 on the B, 17 on the B, 20 on the G, pulling off to 19, then 17, 19 on the D, 19 on G, 19 on the D again, 17 on the G, 19 after that, then again the pull off with the 20th, 19th and 17th in sequence on the G string, then 3 hits on the 19th of the G, with a bit of vibrato there, back to the 17th on the G, then slide down. Section 25. Start on the 19th fret of the G string, bend up a whole tone, then the 17th fret on the B. Now this next move is repeated 4 times. It's the 19th fret on the G, bent up a whole tone, then 17th on the B, 20th on the B, pulling off to the 17th. So as I say, that's 4 times. Okay, then we're back to the 19th fret on the G, bending up a whole tone, 17th on the B, 19th on the G with that bend again, 3 hits on the 17th fret of the B string, back to that bend on the 19th fret of the G, 2 hits on the 17th of the B string, then jump over to the 19th fret of the D string. Section 26. Right, that's the 22nd fret of the top E string, the highest kind of bend there, bend up a whole tone, release the bend, then it's 4 pre-bends here. So in other words, bend the string up a tone, strike the note and release the bend. So then finally a single bend, and still on the 22nd fret, no bend, and then there's a kind of general guitar noise. So I'll recap that phrase and show you how that fits in. Section 27. (19th fret on the top E, bend up a half step, then 19, no bend, 17, 19, then 20 on the B, 17 on the top E, 20 on the B pulling off to 17, 19 on the G, 17 on the B, 19 on the G pulling off to 17, 19 on the D, 19 on the G pulling off to 17, 19 on the A string sliding down to the 17th, then pulling off to the 15th. Okay. 17 on the bottom E, 17 on the A, 17 on the bottom E again, 15 on the A, 17 on the A, 17 on the A again, but this time there's a half tone bend, then 17 on the A no bend, then 15 on the A sliding down. Section 28. Okay, this is the 20th fret of the top E, whole tone bend, then the same again, release the bend slightly in between, then 4 more of those. Okay, then 20 on the top E, 17, 2 hits on the 20th fret, both bent up a quarter tone. Okay, then back to the 17th fret. Then deliberately allow a bit of string noise. I'll demonstrate that in full in a second. And a 22nd fret on the top E, bend. So let's demonstrate that. Okay. Section 29. Okay, another variation on the main melody. 14 on the G, 15 on the B, 17 on the B, 17 on the B with a half step bend. Same again. Then 17 on the B, no bend. 15 on the B, 12 on the G, 13 on the B, 15 on the B, then 15 on the B with that whole tone bend. Same again, but release the bend. And 13 on the B. And really, probably by accident, there's an open B, then 10th on the B, 12th and 13th. So I'll just recap that phrase, including the open note. Okay. Then 13 on the B, bend up a whole tone. Same again, but release the bend. 12 on the B. Rake across to the 10th fret of the B string, the way we discussed earlier, just mute the other strings. Then 12 on the G with a quarter tone bend, 10 on the B, 9 on the G, 12 on the B, and 13 on the B, bend up a whole tone, then release the bend, and slide down. Section 30. Okay, same kind of slant on the main melody. 14 on the G, 15 on the B, 17 on the B, 17 on the B, bend up a half step and hold that. Then 17 on the B with no bend, 15 on the B, 12 on the G, 13 on the B, 15 on the B, bend up a whole step. Then probably best to hold that there, move over to the 15th fret on the top E, okay, then the bend on the 15th fret of the B string again, release that and pull off to 13, then it's 15, pulling off to 13 again. So I'll just recap that bend phrase where you add your little finger in. Okay. Okay, then it's 10, 12 and 13 on the B string, and the 13 is then bent up a whole step and another. Okay, and then release that bend down to the 12th fret of the B. And here it's probably good to just bring the guitar's volume down to about 3 or 4, depending what kind of guitar you're using. And in free time, 9th fret on the B and 9th fret on the G. Section 31. Okay, in this final section, the neck pickup volume control is still down to about 3 or 4, starting with the 8th fret of the B string, bend up a whole tone, then 8th fret of the top E string, then a triple trill thing, 5, 8 and 5 on the top E string, that's hammer on and pull off. Okay, then 8 on the B, then the same trill movement on the B string, 5, 8, 5, hammer on and pull off. Then 7 on the G. Now a similar move there, 5, 7, 5 on the G, hammer on and pull off. Then it's 7 on the D, 7 on the G, 7 on the D again. Then it's 5 hammering on to 7 on the G string. 5 hammering on to 8 on the B string. 5 on the top E. 8 pulling off to 5 on the B string, then it's 8 pulling off to 7, then 5 on the G string, 7 on the D, 7 on the G, 7 on the D again, 5 on the G, 7 on the D, then 5 on the G, 4 on the G, 7 on the D, 5 on the D, 7 on the A, 5 on the A sliding down, 3 on the A, then 2 on the A, and slide up to 5 on the low E string, probably from about 3, but it's a non-specific slide, just as long as it goes in nice and smoothly like that. And there we have, still got the blues. Section 3. Okay, similar thing, basically up an octave. G on the 7th, B on the 8th, 10th, then bent up a half step. Back to G on the 7th, hammer on to 8 while scooping the tremolo, then to the 11 on the B. Jump back to the 5th fret on the G string, then 6 on the B, followed by 8. Staying with that note, bend up a whole tone and then release. Back to the 5 of the G. Then bend that up a whole step and release, and pull off to the 3rd fret. Now these are staccato notes, 4 on the B string, 6 on the B string, then 6 on the B string again, but this time bend up a whole step. Jump back to the 3rd fret of the G string, pull off to the 2nd fret while scooping the arm again. Then jump up to the 8th fret of the B string. Some of these jumps are quite wide, but the tone is better if you go, if you went, which can sound a bit thin, so that's the reason for that. Then the final part of this section is the 8th fret of the B string, and then the 10th fret. Bend that 10th fret up a half step, release, back to the 8th fret, then 8th fret again. You see I've shifted position there to enable me to do the final bend. Section 4. So the melody's developing here. We start on the 7th fret of the G and a scoop up with the tremolo. B on the 8th, B on the 10th, then the 11th of the B. G on the 5th, bend up a whole step, then release the bend. Over to the 5th fret of the top string there, bit of a wobble. Then scoop in on the 5th fret of the G, 6th fret of the B, 8th fret of the B, then that note again, bend up a whole step. 3rd fret of the G string, bend that up a whole step and then release. Then it's the G string open, then onto the 3rd fret, slide down to the 2nd, then back up to the 3rd. Over to the B string, 4th fret, 6th fret, 6th fret again, this time bend up a whole step. 3rd fret of the G, pull off to the 2nd fret and scoop, jump up to the 8th of the B, then it's 8 to 10 on the B, 10th fret again, bend up a half step, release the bend, back to the 8th, still on the B string, 13th fret, bend up a whole step. Section 5. Okay, starting on the 13th fret of the B string, bend that up a whole step and then release the bend. 11th fret of the B string, then the 10th. Jumping down to the 3rd fret here, there's a rake across from the 3rd fret of the B string to the 3rd fret of the top E. The first note isn't really heard, it's more of a grace note. Okay, like that. So then the 6th fret of the B string, then G5, bend up a whole step, release the bend and pull off to G3. Then D5 with some vibrato. Okay, then we have this triplet figure, G on the 12th fret, B on the 11th fret, then up to the 13th fret on that B string and a whole tone bend, repicking that. So okay, now we're going to release that bend, back to the 11th fret, then the 10th, another rake like that at the 3rd fret, back to the 6th fret of the B string, then bend that note up a whole step and hold it as long as you can. Maybe add some vibrato with the bar. Section 6. Okay, we have a nice kind of bass around the 2 middle strings. Whatever you feel is going to sound nice and up front there. Then 10 on the top E string, then 11, and then jump up to 13, bit of vibrato. And for the sake of tone, we're going to jump over for the next note to the 15th fret of the B string, which is bent up a half step and then released. Then to the 13th fret of that same string. Okay, then the 11th fret of the B string to the 13th fret. Then repick the 13th fret, this time bending up a whole step. Release that bend. Then it's the 11th fret to the 13th fret and back to the 11th in a quick grace note hammer on. And slide that down to 10. So I'm going to recap that for you. Okay, Then we have a grace note again, kind of deadened note as if you've raked across the strings to get to the 8th fret of the B string, like that. Then to the 10th fret. And 10th fret again, this time bend up a half step. Release the bend. Then back to the 8th fret. Then to the 10th fret of the G, which is then slid down. 7th fret of the G is then bent up a half step, then release the bend. Okay. Then the 5th fret. Kind of non-specific slide, roughly the 3rd fret of the D string going up to the 5th, this kind of effect. So as long as you get that kind of nice slide up effect, it doesn't really matter where you start. Okay, and then the 3rd fret of the G string, 5th fret of the D, G on the 5th fret, bend up a whole step, do that again, and this time release it. Okay, we're ready for section 7 now. Okay, as you can hear, that's really similar to section 6. In fact, it only changes really when you get after the second repeat. Okay, and then the difference is you jump back up to the 13th fret of the top E string for a full tone bend. Okay, then we have a little kind of turnaround figure. 17th fret of the top E, pulling off to the 15th, then the 14th. In fact, I find a pull off and a slide works quite nicely there. Okay, then back up to the 15th fret, whole tone bend, release that, bend up again for a pre-bend and release that, another pre-bend, but hold it. So I'm going to recap that very last phrase. It was a very typical Gary Moore move there. Going to move on to section 8 now. Right, okay, we have a scooped D note here on the 15th fret of the B string. Quite a big deal is made of that. And then into our, so that's 15, 17 and 18 on the top E string with a bit of vibrato at the end. Jumping over to the 17th fret of the G string, that's bent up a whole step. Then holding that bend, you re-pick it and bend down. Jump across to the 17th fret of the top E then. Okay, 17th fret of the G, B18, top E15, top E17, back over to the G string, 15th fret, and that's bent up a whole step. And then re-picked without the bend at the 15th. The 15th fret is then picked again. This time it's a pull off to the 14th fret. Okay, then back to the 15th fret. Now these next three notes are quite practical to do with one finger if it's comfortable because it's very staccato. It's the 16th fret on the B string, then the 18th, then the 20th. So you can see how that works for the fingering. Jump over to the 14th fret of the G string then, bend up a half step and release. Over to the 15th fret of the top E. That one again, then up to the 17th. Bend that up a half step and release. 18th fret, bend up a whole step and release. 19th fret, whole step and release. And finally, the 20th fret, bend up a whole step and just hold it. So I'm going to play you that last phrase again. Section 9. Okay, we're starting at the 20th fret of the top E string, bend that up a whole step and release the bend. Then the 18th fret of the top E, down to the 17th. Top E on the 15th fret, pulling off to the 13th. 15th fret of the B string with a slight scoop with the tremolo there. And back over to the 15th fret of the top E. Okay, section 10. We have the 20th fret of the top E bent up a whole step. Then the 20th without a bend, down to 18, then 17. Jump down another position to 15. Then 18th fret of the B string. Then again with a bend of a whole step. Now a pentatonic kind of run here. We have the 15th fret of the top E string. 18th fret of the B string pulling off to 15. 17th fret of the G bent up a whole step. 15th fret of the B. 18th. Then the 17th fret of the G string, nearly went wrong there, bent up a whole step. 15th fret of the B string. 17th fret of the G again, bend up a whole step, release the bend and pull off to the 15th fret. 2 hits on the 17th fret of the D string. 17th on the A. 17th on the D. 15th on the D rather, deliberate mistake there. 17th fret on the D, then back to the 15th fret of the D. Section 11. Okay, 20th fret on the top E string again. 20th fret without the bend. Then 18th and 17th. Jump down to the 15th. Then the 18th of the B string. 17th on the G, bend up a whole step and then release the bend. And it's quite tricky really, but you can do that. Jump over the string to the 17th fret on the D. It's easier than squeezing in different fingers to do the same thing. So I'll just recap that first bit for you. This kind of thing. Then we jump off to the open G string, and then we hammer onto the 3rd fret and hit the tremolo about 3 times. So several of those scoops. And the last one is a bit of a dive bomb. But watch your tuning. Section 12. Nice simple section. 20th fret at the top E again, bend up a whole step and hold that with some vibrato. 20th fret with no bend. 18th, then 17th, again vibrato there. Then the 18th fret of the B string. Okay, we're ready for section 13 now. Nice short section. Just a long, slow bend there on the 18th fret of the B string. Bend up a whole step, hold it with some vibrato. Okay, at this point in the song we've just got some little licks interspersed between the backing chords. Section 14. Okay, another short section. 5th fret on the G string. 6th fret on the B, then back to the 5th fret on the G string, bend up a whole step, hold the bend and give it a bit of a wobble as it sustains. Section 15. Bit like the kind of opening melody, 5th fret on the A string, then 5th on the D string, 7th, then the 8th, 5th fret on the G string, bend up a whole step, then release the bend. And again, bend up, but don't release the bend, jump straight to the 3rd fret of the G string, followed by 2 hits on the 5th fret of the D. Section 16. Similar idea, taken up an octave. We're starting with 7 on the G string, then 8 on the B string, 10 on the B string, 10 on the B string again, bend up a half step, 5 on the G string, bend up a whole step, then release the bend, then 8 on the B string, bend up a whole step and release the bend, a bit of vibrato as it sustains. Section 17. Okay, basically another short section, 6 on the B string, hammer on to the 8th on the B string, and hammer on even further to the 10th. Now there's two things going to happen at once you hit the 10th. You'll scoop the tremolo and then go for a half tone bend, so it can seem a bit strange at first, but so that's how it's done. Section 18. Okay, nice little brush across the strings here. 10th fret on the G string, 8th fret on the B string, then the 11th fret on the B string, bent up a whole step and you hold that. Little point to note really with this is for a phrase like that, Gary Moore will generally not do a downstroke and an upstroke, but one downstroke like that. So it's much more fluid. Okay, having done that, staccato note, 8th fret of the B string, 2 more staccatos on the 11th, then another 11th on the B string pulling off to 8. Okay, 10th fret on the G string, then finally a quicker pull off this time. It's the 11th fret of the B string to the 8th fret, then slide that down to the 6th fret. Section 19. Right, here's another fast Gary Moore pentatonic thing. So we start, well, it's the G blues scale in the 3rd position there. We're starting on the 3rd fret of the top E string, then the 6th fret of the B string pulling off to the 3rd fret, and a kind of hammer-on pull-off figure on the G string, 5th fret hammering onto 6th, pull off back to the 5th, then pull off to the 3rd, and the 5th fret of the D string pulling off to the 3rd. Now this is quite unusual, this part of the phrase, so we have the 3rd fret of the G string hammering on to the 5th, hammer on then to the 6th, slide that up to the 7th, 6th fret of the B string, then jump across to the 6th fret of the G string, 3rd fret of the B, then the 6th fret of the G, 5th fret of the G pulling off to the 3rd, 5th fret of the D, 3rd fret of the G, 5th fret of the G pulling off to the 3rd, 5th fret of the G, 5th fret of the G, bend up a whole step, release the bend, pull off to the 3rd. a triplet on the 5th fret of the D, 3 hits, then a 4th hit. So that's quite a complicated phrase, worth working on slowly for a while. Section 20. Right, we are 15th fret of the D string, quarter tone bend, then over to the 12th fret of the G, skipping to the 15th fret of the B string, we then bend up a tone and a half, then keep repicking, and it happens about 8 times, I think. And then release the bend, 12th fret of the G string, 10th fret of the G string, hammering on to the 12th, then hammer on to the 15th of the G string with a scoop. So I'll just play that bit a bit nicer for you. Okay, section 21. Okay, we're starting with a non-sort of pick note. It's the 17th fret of the D string, so you've come out of like that, really. So the first note of this section being, then we have a really nice kind of legato pentatonic thing. We're going 15 to 17, hammering on the D string. Same thing on the G. Then we get over to the B string and we go 15 to 18. Then a full tone bend on that 18th fret. I'll recap that. Now we're going to do the same thing again, but do a 2-tone bend. Okay, and then we're going to go with no bend. So the 3 sections are section 22. Okay, we're starting another one of these fast runs, starting on the 15th fret of the top E string, then the 15th fret of the B string, 18th fret of the top E string, 15th fret of the top E, 17th of the top E, pulling off to the 15th, then the 18th fret of the B string, pulling off to the 15th, the 17th of the G string, back to the 15th fret of the B string, hammering on to the 18th, 15th fret of the top E string, 18th fret of the B string, pulling off to 15, 18th fret of the G string, 15th fret of the B string, 18th fret of the G string, pulling off to the 17th, then the 15th, okay. Then the 17th fret of the D string, 17th fret of the G, 17th fret of the D again, 15th fret of the G string, hammering on to the 17th, 15th fret of the B string, then brush across from the 17th fret of the G to the 15th fret of the B with the pick like that. Okay. Then the 18th fret of the top E string, bent up a whole step. Section 23. Okay, we've got more of those consecutive bends going up, starting on the 17th fret, then the 18th, 19th and 20th. So let's have a look at that. Then that one again. Kind of position shift there. We're going to go to the 20th fret of the B string, 22nd fret of the top E, and bend that up a tone and a half to get an F. Okay, then off and to a straight 22nd fret. Do the bend again, straight note, and a bend again. I'll just recap that a little bit. And the final phrase is the 20th fret of the top E, bend up a whole step, release the bend, and pull off to the 18th fret. and then the 20th fret of the B string. There are some more barely audible fills happening on the fade of the track, but that's basically where the body of it ends, so feel free to put your own things in. That's the loner. We're going to take a look at Still Got the Blues, and here's the intro, section 1. Right, we're starting on the 14th fret of the G string, then the 15th of the B, 17 on the B, bend that up a half step, then play that note again, bent up a half step, 17 again without the bend, then 15, still on the B string, and I kind of slide off that, then 13 on the B string, 15, then a 15 on the B string, bent up a whole tone, same again but release the bend, then the 13th fret, still on the B string, 10th, 12th and 13th frets, okay, then 13th fret again, bent up a whole step, same again but release the bend, 12th fret, and at this point I've just lost a little bit of volume off that neck pickup, just to clean the tone up for the last part of the phrase. Then there's a sort of double stop on the 5th fret of the B and top E strings, like that, just brush across with the pick, and then it's up to the 8th fret of the B string, straight hit on that, then again with a bend of a whole tone, hold that, and then come down off like that. After section 1, the first verse doesn't have any guitar at all. The second verse has a few fills in it, so we'll start talking about those now from section 2. Quite a simple fill there, still with the volume control rolled back slightly from the end of the intro. It's the 7th fret of the G string sliding up to the 9th, then 2 hits on the 8th fret of the B string. Section 3. Okay, pentatonic phrase, 5th fret of the top E string, 8th fret of the B string, over to the 7th fret of the G, then you bend up a whole step, release the bend, pull off to the 5th, and lastly the 7th fret of the D string. Section 4. That's the 7th fret of the G string, bend up a half step, then back to a straight 7th fret on the G string, no bend, pull off to the 5th fret. Section 5. 8th fret on the B string, bend up a whole tone, then over to the G string on the 7th fret, that's bent up a whole tone, release the bend, pull off to the 5th fret, then to the 7th fret of the D string. Section 6. There's a slide from the 12th fret of the G up to the 14th, then up to the 13th fret of the B string. So you may want to slide up actually, as I did a minute ago, with the 3rd finger, bringing your 2nd into position for that. Then it's the 13th fret bent up a whole tone like that. And the last part of the phrase is picked quite quickly. It's the 10th fret of the top E string, 13th on the B, 10th on the B, and then the 13th on the B again. So I'll just recap that phrase for you actually. And then hold that. Section 7. Okay, the volume control's still back slightly on the guitar. Just one note here, 15th fret of the B string, bend up a whole tone, hold it, and then slide down. Section 8. We're starting on the 7th fret of the G string here, bending up a whole tone, releasing the bend, and then pulling off to the 5th fret. Okay, then 2 hits on the 7th fret of the D string, and then a 3rd which is held, and again slide off. Section 9. For this section, the volume control is brought back up to 10. It's the 13th fret of the B string. Bend up a whole step, release that bend, and then pull off to the 10th fret. Then back up to the 13th for a whole tone bend, but this time you release and re-bend in quick succession, like that. So I'll recap that for you. And as that note sustains, gradually release it for when you come off. Hi, I'm Richard Barrett, and we're going to be looking at some Gary Moore tunes. First one, Walking by Myself, starts this way. This is section 1. As you can see, that's the same thing twice with a pause in between. We're starting with the 7th fret of the low E string, then the 5th fret of the A string, the 5th string, then the same again, like that. Then up to an E5 or E power chord, which is A7, D9 and G9. Hit that chord and then slide it off to stop. Then simply repeat that. Now section 2 is a very short section actually, it goes like this. We're playing a double stop on the 9th fret of the G string and the B string, starting with the guitar's volume right down. Strike the notes, fade them in, and slide them down. I'll just demonstrate that again slowly. Now we're going to move on to section 3, which is basically the verse, using the same riff as the intro without a slide off that E5 power chord. Okay, then the same again. Then a kind of accidental noise sliding down the E string, followed by, again. Now there's a different part. That's A on the 2nd fret, then open, low E on the 3rd fret, then open. Okay, next part. That's the G on the 12th fret and the B on the 12th fret, so that's a double stop. You hit that twice, but as well as that, bend it slightly sharp, about a quarter of a tone. Okay, final part of this section, which is a B7 sharp 9 chord. It's the 14th fret of the A string, 13th fret of the D, 14th fret of the G string, and the 15th fret of the B. The 2 E strings are muted either by your thumb or fingers, and then it's a triplet pattern, so there's 6 hits basically. Okay, so that was sections 1 to 4 basically, and then when the beat kicks in and the verse kicks off properly, we're starting with section 5, which is like this. So we're looking at a kind of boogie-woogie pattern here, using basically an E5 power chord and an A5 going up to a B. Classic sort of 3-chord trick material, all slightly palm muted, not completely, but in this fashion. So it's basically open low E, 6th string, 2nd fret on the 5th string. So a single hit there. Then the top E and B strings, like an upstroke there, so, and that's quite staccato, you kill that quickly. Then moving up to what is basically like an E6 chord, 4th fret of the A string, and the low E open muted, so there are 2 hits. Back to the original E5 chord, no high strings this time, 2 hits on that. Back to that E6 chord. Similar thing again in the next bar. Then up to the 5th fret, and 2 hits on that. Back to the 4th fret of that A string for another hit. Top E and B strings again, an upstroke. Okay, back to the E5 chord, E6th chord, and I guess that's like a 7th, up again to that. Back to the E6th. And then the final bar of this section, the E5 chord, 1 hit on that. Now a single note run, ascending here. So it's 2nd fret, then pull off to open on that low E string. Similar move, 3rd fret, then open. Then onto the 4th fret of this low E string, just give it some vibrato. Right, we're ready to move on to section 6 now. Okay, so we have an A5 power chord here, and that's the open A string, and the 2nd fret on the D. Palm muted again lightly, 2 hits. Then up to what's basically an A6 chord, 2 hits on that, 4th fret of the D string and open A string. Back to the original chord, back to the A6 chord. And then in what is basically taking that pattern up 2 frets, we're starting with a B5 power chord, 2nd fret on the A string, 4th fret on the D string. And then I prefer to use my little finger to stretch up for the 6th fret of the D string, and again the 2nd fret of the A string. Back to the original chord, then up again. I'm going to recap that last B for you. Okay, then the ascending run at the end, 2 on the low E, 3rd fret on the low E, bent up a quarter tone, then pull that off to open, 5th fret on the low E, pulling off to open, 6th fret on the low E, then open, but you pick it this time, 7th fret on the low E, 5th fret on the D, then finally the 7th fret on the low E, this time with some vibrato. After that section, there's a repeat of section 5, which is your kind of, that kind of pattern, okay? After this, we're going to go on to section 7, which is the kind of tail end of this half of the verse. So we're starting off in a similar manner to some of the other sections. I'll play it through for you. So we're starting with that A5, A6 type chord arrangement, up to the B, E power chord, then there's a single hit on the low E, and a short kind of open position lick here on in the blues scale, 3rd fret of the top E string, pulling off to open, skip over the B, then it's the G string open, then a kind of double pull off, 3rd fret on the G to the 2nd fret, then to open, 2nd fret on the D, 2nd fret on the G, 2nd fret on the D again, open G, but then like a grace note, hammer on to the 1st fret, 2nd fret on the D, and 2 hits on the 2nd fret of the A string. Section 8. So we've got a very similar fig to the intro really here. The same riff, but no slide down. Same again. Then a trill between the 7th and 9th fret of the G string. So I'll slow that down. Okay, up to tempo, I suppose it's more. Back into. Okay, and then we have the riff that's used to end the intro the first time round. I'll just recap that for you. 2nd fret on the A string, open. 3rd fret on the low E string, then open. Okay, then I'll double stop at the 12th fret twice. And after a quick rest, there's one single staccato hit on a B5 power chord, 2nd fret on the A string, 4th fret on the D, 4th fret on the G. Then we're going into a verse pattern again there. So it's as section 5 really. Okay, so that's just running through that again for you. Then the next section is as section 6. Now we're going to move into the guitar solo with section 9. Okay, we're starting on the 14th fret of the G string, bend that up a whole step. Okay, hold that bend and re-pick it twice more. Quite staccato really. Then down to the 12th fret of the G string, 14th, 14th of the D string, 12th of the G. Similar move here, 14th fret of the G string up a whole step. Re-pick that, 12th fret of the G, 14th, then a couple of quick grace notes, well one really, it's the 12th fret of the G string, quickly picking over to the 14th fret of the D string. I'll just do that once more. That slides down. We've got a repetitive kind of blues scale pattern here. Now it's the 7th fret of the G string, that's a slight pinch harmonic. It's not worth making the effort to go completely mad on it, just to... So we've got that. Then on the D string, 9, 8 and 7, okay? Now that pattern's repeated. Here we go, I'll run it through slowly. Okay, only the first hit on that 7th fret of the G is a pinch harmonic. After that little move, we're going over to the 10th fret of the A string, back over to the 7th on the D, another grace note here, 8th note of the D pulling off to the 7th, 10th on the A, 7th on the D, then a little run along the same string, 10th on the A, 7th on the A, and 5th on the A. Section 11. Okay, 7th fret on the A string, 5th on the D, back to the 7th on the A, 5th on the D, dig in with a bit of vibrato this time, and slide that down. Now we've got a trill thing happening. It doesn't matter the exact number that you do, it's basically as quickly as you can, open on the B string to the 4th and off again. Then without re-picking, move up to the 5th, then to the 7th fret, and this time don't trill, just... So it's a kind of down and up, very careless sounding, deliberately, flamboyant. Moving on to section 12. Okay, start nice and easy, low E string open. Then the 15th fret of the B string, which is bent up a whole step. 12th fret of the top E. And then, because this is kind of a pentatonic-y scale, Gary's hit the 12th fret of the top E and the B together. So you've got this. Okay, then the 15th fret of the G string pulling off to the 14th, then the 12th. 14th fret of the D, 14th fret of the G, there's a pinch harmonic here, which is probably just one of those things that happened that day, but... So find the right place. To my ear, it's about an octave above. So then to the 14th fret of the D, grace note hammer on from the 12th fret of the G string to the 13th. Very Clapton style lick here. 14th fret of the D string, then the 14th fret of the A string twice. And to finish, there's a kind of dead hit on those really the A and D strings, I suppose. Doesn't really matter. Just one of those things where he would have gone ready for the next phrase. Section 13. Okay, there's a triple stop lick here, almost like a country lick. It's the 15th fret of the top E string and B string, then the 14th fret of the G string. Now this is hit with all downstrokes really, just for the attack. So you hit all three together and then bend the G string there at the 14th fret up a whole tone. So So you've got the bend in, then you hold that there and do 2 more re-picks of that bend. And that move is repeated 4 times, so it fills the whole bar like this. But try and get the bends in tune, as I didn't at the beginning there. Okay, moving on to the 12th fret of the G string, and the 14th fret of the D, bit of vibrato, a slide down, and a quick throwaway 3-2 open on the low E string. Not that easy to stick in there because we're jumping back up to the same bar really, same. And better tuning that time too, great. Okay, we're moving on to section 14. Things are getting a bit more shrill here. Right, we have the 19th fret of the top E string, and you bend that up a tone and a half. And a bit of vibrato with that as well. Then the pattern is 19th fret, pre-bend. Doesn't matter if you hear a bit of that bend actually. In fact, I'll play that little phrase slowly. Okay, so you've got the single bend, straight note, kind of pre-bent note, back to a straight note. Now we're going into that pentatonic flurry at the end. We will do another tone and a half bend. And then we have 17th fret on the top E, hammering onto 19, pulling back off to 17. 20 on the B string, pulling off to 17. 19 on the G. 17, skipping over the B string, 17 on the top E string. 20 on the B string, bend up a whole step, and then slide that down. Section 15. So that's another flurry, that's a single bar there. So we have the 15th fret of the top E string, bend that up 2 tones. Break strings if they're not new. And then you release that bend. Then there's a hammer on from the 12th fret of the top E to the 15th, and then back off to the 12th. Okay. Then the 15th fret of the B string, pulling off to the 12th, then hammering back on to the 15th. Back onto the top E string, 12th fret, hammering onto the 14th fret, then back off to the 12th. 15th fret of the B string, pulling off to the 12th. Then the last part of the run is the 14th fret of the G string, 12th fret of the B string, hammering onto the 15th, 12th fret of the top E string, then the 15th fret of the B string, that's bent up a whole tone with some vibrato. So I'm going to recap that slowly because it's quite a quick phrase. It's the kind of thing that Gary would have played, and he may never really do it the same twice, but if you want to really nail it, here it is slowly. Okay, section 16. Okay, another blues scale run. 12th fret on the top E, 15th fret on the B, 12th on the B, double pull off here, 15th fret of the G to the 14th, then the 12th. Okay, 14th fret of the D string, 14th fret of the G, 14th of the D again, 12 on the G, 14 to 12 on the D, 14 on the A, then 12, 13, 14 on the A, and slide down. Okay, after the guitar solo we go into verse 3, which is very similar to the other verses, or the first half is anyway. We'll get into that in a minute. We have the same. Okay, then and then the trill, and then give you all my, I think the line is, and then So that's all pretty familiar. We basically go back into the same chord. Right, now the second half of the verse that I was talking about is more like this. You can see this is section 18. So we're looking at a kind of E major chord based thing. And a very blues piano sounding double stop. So we're going to play the E chord first. It's the low strings, then the high. Like that, very T-Rex. Then a double stop on the second fret of the G and B strings. Then the G and B strings open, this time hammer on just to the first fret of the G string. So there's that recap for you. So the basic figure repeats like this. Then a slightly different run at the end. Open E, second fret on the low E, back to open, third fret on the low E, open again, and the fourth. It just so happens there isn't any vibrato that time, though I don't think that's desperately important. Then we move on to section 19, which is like this. Okay, so as you can see, that's the A5 power chord thing happening with the A6. So we bar of that, move it up to a B, same thing. Some people might prefer to use a more, so there isn't a right way or a wrong way to do that. It's just that I prefer the clearer sound I get with that. Then another bar of the A, up to B, A again, and this time single staccato hit on the B5 chord, and we're moving there onto section 20. As you can see, that's quite a free form thing. The drums are all going mad, it's all free time. We have the, just come from the stop. Then really just the D, G and B strings open. Just one of those things that heat of the moment. 15th fret on the top E string, 12th fret on the top E, 15th fret on the B, then the 12th fret on the top E and B strings, 14th fret on the G, now that's bent up a whole step, then released and then pull off to the 12th fret. 14th fret on the G again, 12th on the B, 12th on the G, 14th fret on the D. Now we have an F7 sharp 9 chord, which is the 8th fret of the A string, 7th on the D, 8th fret on the G, and the 9th fret on the B. The two E strings aren't used in this, so they're muted with your thumb or fingers. That's then single hit, then down to E7 sharp 9. So that's held, as I say, while the drums go mad, that kind of thing. Then right up to the 22nd fret for a single bend with a bit of vibrato. Then what almost sounds like an accidental open G and B, just for that kind of raunchy effect, back to an E7 sharp 9 chord to finish. So that's Walking by Myself. Section 15. Twelfth fret on the G string, bend up a whole step, then release the bend and pull off to the 10th fret. Back to the 12th fret of the G, bend up a whole step. Staccato hit on the 13th fret of the B. then a half step bend, 12th fret of the G string, which is then released. Slide down, then 7 to 9 on the G string. Hit the 9th fret again on that G string and bend up a half step. Then release the bend and slide down to 7. So I'm going to recap that. Okay, section 16. Okay, we have 5th fret on the D string, really dig in there and pull off to the 3rd fret. 5th fret on the A string. Then the top half of a D power chord, which is a double stop on the 7th fret of the D and G strings. Then the 5th fret on the A string. Then the same kind of double stop idea, top half of a C power chord, 5th fret of the D and G strings. Slide that up to the 7th fret, then back down to the 5th. Okay, then 7th fret of the D string, 7th fret of the G. Then slide from the 7th, I beg your pardon, the 5th fret to the 7th of the D string and back. 5th fret of the A string, 2nd fret of the D, 3rd fret of the D, one of those trills between 2, 3 and 2 on the D string, back to the 5th of the A string, 2nd fret of the D string, and then 3rd, 2nd on the G string, then 3rd of the G string sliding up to the 5th fret, and hammer on to the 7th fret. Section 17. Fifth fret of the B string, bend up a half step and then release the bend. Then a pre-bend, half a step and release that. And then hammer on between the 5th and 7th fret of the D string. Then the last little touch there is a double pull off between the 7th, 5th and 3rd frets of the D string. Section 18. So we're spelling out the chords of the song. We've got the 13th fret of the top E string, then the 15th of the B, and the 14th of the G. Then the 13th on the top E again, and the 12th, 13th on the B, and the 12th on the G. Slightly different move, similar melody. 10th fret of the B string, 10th fret of the top E, 12th fret of the top E. Same note again, this time with a half tone bend. Back to the 10th fret and skip over to the G string for a whole tone bend with a bit of vibrato. Section 19. Similar to the previous section really, 13th fret on the top E, then the 12th, 13th on the B, and the 12th on the G. You hold that and slide down like so. Section 20. Okay, slightly more flamboyant version of the same thing, sliding up to the 10th fret of the B string, then the 10th fret of the top E, 12th fret, 12th fret again with a semitone bend, 10th fret of the B, 12th fret of the G, bend that up a whole step and give it a good wobble. Then staccato hits on the 10th and 13th fret of the top E, one after the other. then the 12th fret of the top E, 13th fret of the B, and 12th fret of the G. We'll give that a wobble and slide it down. Section 21. Like the middle section, the guitar's volume is reduced slightly to clean the sound up a bit. We're starting on the B string and it's the 8th, 6th, 5th and 6th, like this. Then back to the 8th with a whole tone bend, 8th with no bend, 6th and the 5th. Section 22. As you can see, the attack is taken away by me violining in the notes with the guitar's volume control. So I'm hitting the notes first in most cases, sometimes just hammering them on, whichever's easiest depending where you're picking, so experiment with that. I'm starting on the 7th fret of the D string, 7th fret of the G, 6th fret of the B, then the 5th, then the 8th, 8th fret of the top E, 12th fret of the top E, 10th of the top E, up to the 13th, then up to the 15th with a whole tone bend, then a straight note on the 15th, no bend, then the 12th fret. Then there's a pause as the kind of piano and synth chords change, and the very last part of the song is the 7th fret of the G string, and 7th fret of the D. I quite like to hammer these on. 4th fret of the D, and then the 5th fret of the A. So that's Empty Rooms. We're looking at Empty Rooms by Gary Moore, of course, the studio version of this track. There's a keyboard intro, and of course the guitar doesn't really come in until after the first verse, when it's going to play this figure, section 1. Where the 15th fret of the top E string, bend up a whole tone, then release the bend, then hit that note again without a bend. 13 and 12 then on this top E string, then hammer on from 12 to 13. Okay, section 2 is when the track carries on and Gary plays some fills during that verse. That's the 13th fret of the top E string, then the 12th fret with a quite pronounced vibrato, 10th fret of the B string, then the 13th fret of the B string, bent up a whole tone. And hold that for a couple of bars until it dies off. Section 3. So it's like an accompaniment really to that bridge. We have this country and western type idea, hammering on from the 5th fret of the D string to the 7th. Leaving that ring, then I'll have the 6th fret of the B string. So then if you're playing that chord shape where you have the bar across at the 5th fret, 6th fret on the B and the 7th fret on the D, then just hit the top 2. So I'll recap that beginning. Okay, then the 5th fret of the B string on its own. Then a kind of trill hammering on from the 5th to the 6th fret of the B string, then pulling off back to the 5th. Okay, and 7th fret of the G string, 5th. Then a small G minor chord, which is basically a bar at the 3rd fret of the top 4 strings there. and then move your third finger over here for the 5th fret of the D string. You simply arpeggiate that, and on the original recording there's a bit of a wobble with a vibrato bar there. Okay, here's section 4. Right, that's the 8th fret of the B and top E strings sliding up to the 10th and back to the 8th. Okay, and then again, re-pick on the 8th, down to the 6th, then stay on the 6th on the B string but move down to the 5th on the top E. Okay, then a C triad really, which I'm using one finger for. It's the 5th fret of the D, G and B strings. Again, bit of a Hank Marvin type wobble there. Then move that down 2 frets for a B flat triad. After the second chorus, there's a classical sounding guitar solo, and that starts with section 5 here. Now I've changed to both pickups for this, and I've pushed the guitar's volume control down slightly so it's not as distorted, which is quite a good way of getting around this kind of thing live. So we're starting on the 2nd fret of the G string, 2 hits, and then sliding up to the 5th. Okay, then the 7th fret on the D string, and the 5th, then hammer on from the 5th to the 7th, then the 7th fret on the G string, then a trill between the 5th and 7th fret of the G string, so it's 5, 7, 5, hammer on and pull off. Then the 4th fret of the G string, 5th fret of the G string, 7th fret, and the 5th fret of the D string. Feel free to add some vibrato with the tremolo arm. Section 6. Okay, we have the 7th fret of the A string, 5th of the D string, then 5th hammering on to the 7th in a kind of grace note, very quick hammer on. 7th fret of the D string to 4th fret of the G, another grace note type hammer on from the 4th to the 5th on the G string, then another one from the 7th to the 9th of that string, then 7th on the G string. Now 2 harmonics over the 5th fret of the D string, then the G string. Section 7. We're sliding from the 3rd fret of the D string to the 5th. Leaving that ring, we'll add the 5th fret onto the B string. A little bit of country again. Then the 5th fret of the D string followed by the 6th and the 8th. A trill between the 6th and the 8th, 6, 8, 6 on the B string. Back to the 5th. To the 7th of the G string, which slides up to the 9th. And then slides back for 2 more hits on the 7th. So that little move there is. Section 8. Fifth fret on the G string, followed by the 4th, then a grace note hammer on back to the 5th. Then 5th on the G again, 4th on the G, and the 2nd on the G. Hammer on from the 2nd of the G to the 4th, then a trill, again 2, 4, 2, this will be on the G string, and back to the 1st fret of the G, bit of vibrato. 4 harmonics now, B string at the 12th fret, then the top E at the 12th fret, and the second 2 are the same 2 strings at the 5th. Next is the main guitar solo, which starts with section 9. So it's the 13th fret of the B string, bend up a whole tone, bit of vibrato. 13th fret again, but this time a quarter tone bend. Then the 10th fret of the top E string, 10th fret of the B. I kind of rake across the strings to the 8th fret of the B string, then the 6th fret of the B string, 7th fret of the G, then 5th fret of the G, up to the 7th, kind of grace note slide from the 6th fret to the 5th fret of the D string, 4th fret, then the 5th fret of the A string. Now staccato run starting with the open 5th string, 5th fret on that 5th string, 2nd fret on the D, 3rd fret on the D, then the 5th fret on the D. I'll just recap that. Section 10. Okay, we've got quite a nasty bend here on the 5th fret of the D string. I'm choosing to pull this down. It seems to come out cleaner that way. So you bend down a whole tone, hold it, and then pull up a further semitone, then back to the original note, which is repicked. Okay. Now we have staccato hits on 3 and 2 of that string. Then a grace note hammer on from 2 to 3. Hit those two notes separately. A grace note hammer on from 3 to 5 of the D string. Then those two notes picked again. Now I'm sliding from 5 to 7 on the D string. I'm using the same finger by flattening it to go over to the 7th fret of the G string, 5th fret of the D, 6th, then one of those triple trill things, 5, 6, 5, 7th fret of the G, 5th fret of the B, nearly lost it there, 6th fret of the B. Section 11. Start on the 8th fret of the B string, bend up a whole step. 8th fret with no bend, staccato hit, same again on the 6th fret. Then 8th fret on the B string, this time hold it. And slide that downwards. Now up to the 13th fret of the B string. Another triple trill type thing between 10, 13 and 10. Then 12 on the G. Another one of those trills between 10 and 12 on the G string. Down to the 9th on the G. 12 on the D. 9 on the G. 10 on the G. Jump over now to the 12th fret of the top E string. Another trill between 10 and 12, 10, 12, 10. 13 on the B. 10, 12 and 13 on the top E. Then that happens again. And we're ready to move on to section 12. Fifteenth fret on the top E, bend up a whole step. And then hold that bend, push it up a further semitone, not easy at first, and release. And re-pick once you've released. Skip positions to the 18th fret of the B string, followed by the 17th. Back to the 18th. Another trill between 17 and 18, that's 17, 18, 17. Then the 19th fret of the G. Now these notes are all staccato. It's 17 on the B, and 18, 20, 17 on the top E, 20 on the top E, and a bend up a whole tone on that same note. Section 13. starting on the 20th fret of the top E string, 2 bends up a whole step, then a straight hit of that note with no bend. Quite a pronounced trill there between 18 and 20, so that's 18, 20, 18. Then 17, 20 on the B string, slide that down. Now we have 15 on the B, 15 on the top E, 17 on the same string, bend up a whole step, repick without the bend, trill between 15, 17, 15, then 18 on the B, skip positions because it makes the rest of the run easier, trill between 10, 13 and 10 on the top E, 13 on the B, 11 on the B, then 13 on the B, bend up a whole tone and release, then 11 on the B string, sliding down to 10, G12, pull off to 10, you can slide that down to 9, so recap that with a clearer sound, 12 on the D, G9, and it's quite nice to slide up to the 10, because it makes it easier then to go over to the 10th fret of the B string, hammer on to 13, and the final note of that section is G on the 12th fret, bent up a whole step. Section 14. So we have the 14th fret of the G string, 15th on the B, 13th on the top E, another one of these triple things between 12, 13 and 12 of the top E string, 15 on the B, 12 on the top E, 13 on the top E, then 15 bent up a whole step again on the top E, hold that with no vibrato, then do another one with, but gradually release the bend with the vibrato. Tricky at first, but this is how it goes. Then down to 13 on that string, and 15 on the B string. Section 14. Right, that's a B flat power chord, and it's basically hit on the quaver beat, and we're starting with it quite heavily muted and ending up without it muted at all. So you gradually release that and dig in as much as you like there. Then the G power chord we talked about earlier with the mini bar there, 3rd fret of the B and E strings, open G, and the 5th fret of the A and D strings. Single hit and then kill that quickly. The chorus repeats next. So we've got that pattern played 4 times. I'll just recap that again. After the 4th time there, we're going to change key and go up into E. Basically, it's exactly that chord progression moved up 2 frets. I'll demonstrate for section 15. Okay, as you can hear, that's basically the chorus upper key. So we're starting with an E power chord, 7th fret on the A string, 9th on the D and G. Up 3 frets for a G power chord, that's the 10th fret of the A string and the 12th fret of the D and G. Down to the C chord, we've seen that already. Then up 2 frets to a D. That happens 3 times. And as the chorus ended before on the B flat with a muted pattern, it now does with the C. Like that. Then there's a descending scale run which ends the song. That's section 16. Okay, 12 on the E, going down to 10, then 8. Same thing on the B, 12, 10, 8. over to the G for 11, 9 and 7. Then onto the D where it's 10, 9 and 7. Then onto the A string, 10, 9 and 7. 10 on the low E. Then an E power chord, single hit, then slide down. That's out in the fields. We're going to take a look at Out in the Fields. Here's section 1. Okay, this main melody is played in octaves actually, so we're going to go with the higher part. It's the top E, 12th fret, bend up a half step. Then the top E, no bend, at the 12th fret. B, 13. Same again, but with a whole tone bend. Bit of vibrato. Then the same move again. Okay, then a similar melody. We're doing the same thing at the beginning, 12th fret of the top E, up a half step. Then 12th fret of the top E, no bend. 13th fret of the top E, bend up a whole step and then release. And then up to the 15th fret of the B string and hit the tremolo sort of in the rhythm with the track like this. Okay, then it starts again. Like that. And the difference this time is, so it's about 7 hits I think on the tremolo there, it's cut shorter. Section 2, the second part of the verse, the guitar comes in, so I'll demonstrate that. Okay, so we're using a C power chord here to start with. 3rd fret of the A string, 5th fret of the D, and 5th fret of the G. Just before starting, there's a slide down. And then there's another hit on that, which is like a triple hit, so it's down, up, down. Okay. Same thing really on the G, which is 3rd fret of the low E string, 5th fret of the A, and 5th fret of the D. You can hit those straight or, and Gary actually varies between the two on the recording. One hit there. And then there's an A power chord, which is the open A string, 2nd fret on the D and 2nd fret on the A, and that's hit with downstrokes. Okay. And then to lead into the chorus, there's this. So that's 2 hits on each, open A, 3rd fret on the low E, 1st fret on the low E, and then open low E. Section 3 is the chorus. So as you can hear, that's the same thing 3 times. First is the D5 power chord, 5th fret of the A string, 7th fret of the D and G strings. Then take that whole thing, complete up 3 frets. So we're A on the 8th, D on the 10th and G on the 10th for an F5 power chord. Whole thing down to the 1st fret, so starting from the 1st fret of the A string, 3rd of the D and G for B flat power chord. Then up 2 frets, starting at the 3rd there for a C power chord. So that's 3 times. I'll demonstrate once more. Section 4 is the last part of the chorus. It's a B flat power chord, and it's like this. So our B flat power chord, 1st fret of the A string, 3rd fret of the D and G strings, Now this is played in a muting pattern where it's alternating between muted and full-blooded hits of the chord. So we have 2 mutes, 1 hit, 2 mutes and 1 hit, and carrying on like that. So we then so the last part there is 2 hits on the B flat power chord, then the open A twice, and then this G5 power chord, which is a mini bar at the 3rd fret of the B and top E strings. Leave the G string open in the middle, and then the 5th fret of the D string, and the 5th fret of the A string. So you don't use the bottom E, that's muted usually with your thumb. Okay. A section of the intro is repeated next. So as you can hear, it's exactly the same as the second half of section 1, but do a slight kind of dive bomb thing here at the end, leading into the second verse. Section 5. Okay, we're using a D power chord here, 5th fret on the A string, 7th fret on the D and G strings, similar muting and full chord hit pattern to the end of the chorus. Okay, and then repeat that. So that's basically 4 bars. Okay, then moving down to the B flat power chord. And then when you're just short of 2 bars there, just completely relax the tremolo. Come on with a C5 power chord, as before. Okay, and then the G5. And instead of the A at the end here, we're going to go for an octave thing, which is the 12th fret of the A string and the 14th fret of the G string. Muting that middle D string there, but with your first finger is probably the best way. 1 hit on that, then a slow dive bomb down. The chorus comes again next, and you simply repeat sections 3 and 4. Section 6. So it's very much like the main melody. And the difference being that last note, it's a pre-bend at the 11th fret of the B string, up a whole tone, and then release the bend and give it some vibrato. Section 7. So as you can hear, it's a half-time feel on the double sort of stabs on the power chords. First the B flat power chord. Then to a G power chord, 3rd fret on the low E, 5th fret on the A and D strings, 4 double hits. Up 2 frets for an A power chord, 5th fret on the A string, 7th fret on the A and D strings. Then to a C power chord. Then some single ringing hits on the chords, a G power chord, A power chord, and a C power chord. Section 8. Similar to the chorus, start with a D power chord, and an F, B flat, and C. There are a couple of layers of guitars here, so we've opted for the most prominent parts. Then that carries on underneath, and we're going to jump to the 12th fret of the G string, then the 10th and the 9th, then up to the 15th fret of the B string, and rhythmic hits on the tremolo, then that's hit again, and double up, and we're into the solo. Section 9. Okay, that's a rake across the muted strings to the 7th fret of the D string. There's a fair bit of subtle use of the tremolo on this. Then a trill between 5, 7 and 5 on the D string, hammer on and pull off. 3 on the D string. Scoop into the 2nd fret of the D string, like that. 3 on the D string, and 5th on the D string. Then another trill between 2, 3 and 2 on the D string, hammer on and pull off. Then to 5 on the A string. Then 5 on the A string again. 2nd on the D, and 3rd on the D. Section 10. Right, this is muted pretty much throughout until the last sliding phrases. So it's open A, then open D, 2nd fret on the D, followed by the 3rd and the 5th. So that's a little recap there. Then the same kind of move on the G string, 2, 3 and 5. Then the 3rd fret of the B string, 5th fret of the B string, then a trill between 3, 5 and 3, hammering on and pulling off, then 5 on the G string, 3 on the G string, over to the 6th fret of the B string, pull off to 5, then 7 on the G, then 6 to 8 slide on the B string, then 8 to 10 slide on the B string while scooping slightly with the tremolo. That's not quite right, it's a bit better. Then the same again, but going from 10 to 11 of the B string. And finally, 7th fret on the G, with a bit of vibrato from the tremolo. Section 11. This alternate picked run is muted until it gets up to the high register later on. We're starting on the 7th fret of the A string, starting with an upstroke. Okay, then going alternate sort of down and upstrokes all the way through. So we have 7 on the A, 8 on the low E, 10 on the low E, 7 on the A, 8 on the A, 10 on the low E, then 7 on the A, 8 on the A, 10 on the A, then 7, 8 and 10, over to the D string, 7, 8 on the A, 10 on the A, 7 on the D, 8 on the D, 10 on the A, then 7, 8 and 10 on the D, then it's 7 on the G, 8 on the D, 10 on the D, 7 on the G, 9 on the G, 7 on the G, 9 on the G, and 10 on the G. Section 12. This is the second section of the alternate picked run. It's less palm muted than the first. So we're starting with 12 on the G, then 9, 10 and 12 on the G, 10 on the B, 12 on the G, 10 on the B, 11 on the B, 13 on the B, 11 on the B, back to 13, top E we're going to now, 10th fret, 12th fret, 13th fret, then 10, 12 and 13, Still staying on the top E, it's 15, 12, 13, 15. Up again, this time it's 17, 13, 15, 17. Okay, then 18, 15, 17, 18. Then it's 20, 17, 18, 20. And finally, 20th fret of the top E string, bend up a whole tone. Section 13. Starting on the top E, 20, then 18 pulling off to 17, 20 on the B string with the vibrato from the tremolo there, 2 hits on the 17th fret of the B, 17 on the top E, back over to the B, same fret, and back over to the top E, 17th again. Then it's the 21st fret on the top E, then 17th fret, back to the 21st, then up to the 22nd fret of the top E string with a whole tone bend and some vibrato. Okay, then 22nd fret, no bend but slide down.